Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Evans here and Rolo. And first of all, greetings to any Jack Russells who may be watching, and of course to the rest of you as well. Today we are delving into Greek mythology in the fourth book in the Secret Adventures of Rolo series. This one is called Jewel Dog and the Dragons, and today Rolo is off to the Underworld. I'm just going to bribe him to sit still. Wait a minute, Rolo. Wait a minute. Sit down. And we shall begin. So this is chapter 10. Whilst the smiley lady and floppy-haired boy were out one day, I climbed up on the chair so I could take a closer look at the book of Greek mythology which had been left open on the table. Pawing through the pages, I came across a chapter about Hades. I really found it quite interesting and thought I would have a word with Athelstan to see if this was another Greek adventure I might be able to go on. When the house fell silent, I rushed out to find the tree dragon. "What is this little pup?" asked Athelstan. "What can you tell me about Hades?" I said, coming straight to the point. "Hades, the Greek god, you mean? Well, all ears, I settled down at the foot of the tree to listen. I saw from the corner of my eye that Julia had also come out to listen to the story. Hades was the brother of Zeus and Poseidon. He was third in the pecking order. Zeus ruled the gods from Mount Olympus, Poseidon ruled the sea, and Hades was given the underworld, but he was also the god of wealth. His name means invisible," Athelstan continued. Interesting, I thought. The underworld was a dark and dismal domain. Hades decided that anyone who entered his underground kingdom would never be permitted to leave. It was the ultimate resting place. This was chilling. "I suppose you want to go there," he said, looking down at me. To be honest, the tree dragon wasn't really selling it to me, but I'm naturally curious and could see the twinkling of the jewel collar in Julia's hand, so I thought, YOLO, why not? I lay down at the foot of the tree so Julia could fasten the collar that would facilitate the journey to this mythological place and asked, "Has anyone ever come back from Hades?" "Why, yes, Heracles, Orpheus and Odysseus all returned from the underworld if their stories are to be believed." Well, at least that was a small crumb of comfort. "I think I'll pass on this adventure, thanks, Paddy Paws. I mean Rodor," said Julia as she adjusted the collar and watched my fur turn to scales. "You'll need this," said Athelstan, and he dropped a silver coin from the tree. It looked suspiciously like the one I'd brought back from Peter Long on a previous adventure in medieval England. Julia picked up the coin and tucked it under the jewel collar and told me not to lose it, and she also warned me to be careful not to eat anything. All down to me then, this adventure. Oh well, no point in hanging about, let's get on with it. What's that saying? Curiosity killed the... Yes, well, it wasn't going to kill a Jack Russell. I took to the skies and ascended over the treetops, rising vertically through the clouds, hoping I could get the figure of 8 and the wing-dipping bit right, otherwise who knows where in myth or legend I might end up. It did occur to me that without Julia to take the collar off, I'd have to remain a dragon, but I didn't think that would be too much of a problem. I came down to land beside a river whose water was as black as oil. It was eerily quiet, and I wondered if I was in the right place. There were no signs saying Underworld. Mist swirled about, adding to the creepy atmosphere of the scene. Was this the right place? I didn't have long to find out. I heard the whooshing of moving water, and a boat glided into view and pulled up alongside the bank. A hooded figure motioned to me to get in the boat. He didn't seem surprised to be taking a dragon passenger. "I am Charon, and I will take you across the river at Charon, but only if you have money to pay me," he said. I remembered the silver coin tucked in my collar and moved closer to the strange boatman so he could remove it. His fingers were all bone, and I thought he might be a skeleton underneath that hooded robe. "I'll have a return ticket, please," I said politely, remembering a ferry journey across the River Dart with the smiley lady where I had to have my own ticket. "One-way fare only, there is no return," said the cheerless Sharon as he cast off from the bank and used a big stick to punt the craft across the river. I hoped he meant that there was no cheap day return ticket and wondered how I would purchase another single as I didn't have any coins left, but I couldn't be worrying about that just now. We bumped the bank on the other side and the scary ferryman tied up the boat and motioned for me to alight. I turned round to ask what time the return ferry left, but he'd already disappeared in his ghostly craft. I fought hard against an impending sense of doom. "Right, Rolo, Rodor, best claw forward," I said out loud to nobody, but saying it gave me courage. A huge, dark and foreboding palace loomed ahead of me. There was nothing else for it. I knew I had to go in. Guarding the door was the most terrifying dog I'd ever seen in my life. It looked a bit like the Roman dog Brutus I'd met in Pompeii, but this was much scarier as it had 3 heads. The creature seemed to be having an argument with itself. I edged a little nearer, grateful for my dragon disguise, else I feared I would be devoured. I tried to pull myself up to full height, hoping to intimidate the snapping creature. "Another one for the circus," snapped the dog head nearest me. "You better come in," said another. "This way then," said the third. "Hurry up and shut the door behind you." All 3 dog heads glared at me. They were slavering wildly as if they hadn't eaten for a week. I saw they were tethered to a post, 3 iron collars all forged together, and 1 very heavy-duty link chain kept them there. Well, this seemed to be going well. I hadn't met with any resistance, and I didn't give them a backward glance as I trotted on. The massive wooden door creaked open, and I tiptoed in. I tried to quell my terrier shake, over which I have little control, even though I was temporarily a dragon. There was a horrible stench in the air. I couldn't identify the source of it, but it smelt a bit like a dustbin which desperately needed emptying. To my surprise, amid all this gloom and decay, there, sitting by an open fire, was a beautiful young woman. She had long hair and wore flowing robes and sumptuous jewellery, and the table next to her was groaning under the weight of freshly prepared food, but she clearly wasn't happy. The poor lady was sobbing as if her heart would break, and as I drew nearer, I could tell from her less than beautiful red and blotchy face that she had been crying for some time. I approached cautiously as I didn't want to scare her. She must have heard me. I wasn't very light on my claws. "Come here, sweet little dracon in a necklace," she curbed her sobs. "What are you doing here in this miserable place? Has my husband sent you as a present to cheer me? That's very kind of him. He is trying, though he doesn't have much of a clue." Her voice was soft and friendly. The lovely lady scooped me up in her arms and set me on her lap. Well, I couldn't look that scary after all. I forgot all about being a dragon and started licking away her tears. She smelt nice. "Oh, that tickles," she squealed. I found that I could speak to her and told her about the manner of my arrival. "Oh, Cerberus wouldn't stop you coming in. He's only there to stop anyone leaving." And with that, she started crying again. This was a bit awkward. When I'm a cute Jack Russell, I can usually cheer people up because I snuggle in and they cuddle me back and they feel a lot better. I'm small, soft and furry. Not too sure this works when I'm a scaly dragon. "What's a pretty girl like you doing in a place like this?" I used my best chat-up line. "My name is Persephone and I've been brought here against my will. Hades fell in love with me, so he kidnapped me, opened up the earth, and I fell through the crack right in front of my mother's eyes. That's how I came to be here in this horrible place. I would give anything to be able to leave. My mother Demeter is beside herself with worry. She is goddess of the harvest and has taken herself away from the earth to mourn my loss, which means that there are no crops and everything on earth is barren. It's as if the world has come to an end. Hades will not give me up, and my mother will not stop mourning. I just don't know what's going to happen. I seem to be causing a global disaster." Ooh, that sounds familiar, I thought, remembering Helen of Troy, and I tried to snuggle in to comfort her, but it wasn't really working. Instead, I sort of head-butted Persephone in the ribs. Dragons are not very cuddly, it seems. Suddenly there came the sound of approaching hoofbeats and the clattering of wheels, and in front of my eyes a chariot pulled by 4 shiny black horses came to a screeching halt right inside that large gloomy hall. The draught they brought with them almost extinguished the fire. "What have we here?" a voice boomed down like thunder as a huge man alighted from the chariot, and I was hoisted into the air by yet another strong, dark and hairy Greek arm and dangled in front of a bulbous nose for inspection. "I didn't order a drakon," Hades roared. "They've sent the wrong pet for you." He turned to Persephone, and for a terrible moment I thought he was going to fling me into the fire. "But he's cute, my love. Please let me keep him." The lovely lady rose and entreated her husband with big, tear-filled eyes. After what seemed like an eternity, Hades handed me over to his wife with a grunt, and I breathed a sigh of relief, safe once more in her perfumed arms. "Your mother is causing a bit of a problem on Earth," Hades said to Persephone. I hoped I wasn't going to witness a domestic argument. "It seems she's gone on strike, and if I don't release you from the underworld, then mankind will starve, as she will not allow their crops to grow. I don't like being bullied by a woman, and I don't know what all the fuss is about. Sort it out, will you?" And with that, he leapt on his chariot and left the hall in a hurry. "May I speak?" I piped up. Persephone set me on a low table and bent down to listen more closely. "Speak, little drakon," she sighed. "Don't you like it here? Does he treat you badly?" I asked. "Well, I don't mind Hades himself. He has a softer side that nobody sees. He's full of bluster to the outside world, but he can be kind in his own way. But I haven't been able to eat anything since I arrived here. I've completely lost my appetite. I don't want to be here all the time in this miserable place. It's like a dungeon, and I do miss my mother." She spoke softly. "Well, why don't you strike a bargain? Stand up for yourself," I ventured. This seemed a novel idea in ancient Greece. "Why not see if your husband will let you return to Earth for a certain time each year, on the understanding that you will return to spend an agreed amount of time with him in his lovely kingdom? How does that sound?" "Clever little drakon. This is a marvellous solution. Now all I have to do is persuade him, and only if he lets me keep you as a pet," Persephone added, dabbing her beautiful eyes with a hanky. "Oh no, this wasn't part of the bargain. How am I going to get out of this one?" "I think I shall call you Dirkamai." I didn't have to wonder for long what that meant. "You are the seeing one. You see an answer to my problem." Persephone patted me on the head as if I were a little dog, and I must say she sounded a lot more cheerful than when I first entered the room. "All of a sudden I feel hungry." The beautiful young woman pulled a platter of fresh fruit towards her. I remembered Yulia's warning not to eat anything in the underworld, but guessed it only applied to me. I watched spellbound as Persephone chose a pomegranate, tearing through the leathery skin and biting chunks of the fleshy fruit. Blood-coloured juice was running down her chin as she broke her sad fast, feasting on the bright red pips as if her life depended on it. "Are you sure you won't have any? It's delicious," she said, holding a piece of dripping fruit out to me. I resisted. To be fair, if it had been steak, I might have been tempted. Suddenly, Hades himself reappeared in the centre of the room. He had a helmet under his arm. I wondered how he did that. I certainly hadn't heard or seen him enter, and there was no sign of the chariot. "He's always coming and going," she whispered in my ear. "His helmet has magical properties. When worn, both it and the wearer become invisible. It's a bit creepy, to be honest." I wondered how much of our conversation he had overheard. "I think we have solved the problem," Persephone explained the plan. Hades listened to his beautiful wife and conceded, "Very well, you can spend 8 months of the year with your mother and 4 months of the year down here with me in my realm. How does that sound? I don't want to make you unhappy, but I can't give you up entirely. Go at once to see your mother and persuade her to resume her duty of overseeing the crops and bring this drought to an end. Make sure you look after Dirkamai for me whilst I'm away, she said over her shoulder as she skipped out of the draughty hall. Now I had to manage my own escape. I quickly hatched a plan. It was just the two of us, dragon and man. I asked Hades to tell me about life as a Greek god. As I had suspected, he loved talking about himself. There was no stopping him. Whilst he was telling me stories about Zeus, Poseidon and life on Mount Olympus and all the tricks they played on mankind, he drank deeply from a large silver goblet. I could tell he was getting sleepy, and before long he was snoring loudly with his head slumped on his folded arms across the table. I seized the moment, grabbed the helmet and pulled it over my head. It was so big I disappeared inside it, literally, for I had become invisible. I made for the exit and slipped unseen past Cerberus. The three-headed dog was still having an argument with itself. I caught up with Persephone by the jetty. She was having a hard time persuading Charon to take her across to the other side of the river. "I've forgotten my purse," she wailed. "I need to run this by the boss," said Charon. "My orders are that nothing leaves this place." And the ferryman left her sitting in the ghostly boat whilst he went into the palace to find Hades. I was still invisible under the helmet when I jumped on board the boat. I flung the helmet off and it fell with a clatter at Persephone's feet, giving her the fright of her life when I appeared beside her. "If I were you, I would grab that stick and punt us over to the other side," I said, "before that husband of yours changes his mind." Persephone didn't hesitate, picked up the pole and started pushing the boat out into the river. Charon reappeared, shaking his fist. And then the booming voice of Hades could be heard across the water. "Farewell, my lovely. Your departure does not trouble me. I've found the remains of the pomegranate you ate, so I am assured of your return." Little had Persephone realised that by eating a few fruit pips and therefore breaking her fast in the underworld, Hades had a hold on her for evermore. Poor Persephone, her destiny was sealed. Mental note to self: never touch a pomegranate. I stayed around to watch the very moving reunion of mother and daughter on the opposite riverbank. In front of my eyes I could see seeds starting to germinate and green shoots pushing up through the bare earth. The drought was finally over. Spring was on its way. I thought about Persephone having to return to the underworld and understood that this is why ancient Greeks believed that nature dies back in winter when Demeter is mourning the loss of her daughter, but that Hades keeps his pledge to let Persephone return to her mother every year, assured the fertile time of spring and the promise of good harvest to come. I wondered for a fleeting moment how Charon was going to get his ferry back. At least I'd left Hades' helmet on board. Much as I knew the floppy-haired boy would enjoy testing its invisibility powers, I knew Athelstan wouldn't let me keep it, as it belongs in mythology and not modern day. "Can you get the jewel collar off me, please? My wings are tired and I'm dying to scratch," I begged Julia once I'd arrived at the foot of the oak tree. "Had enough dragon adventure for one night, little pup," smiled Athelstan. I couldn't wait to feel the tingling sensation as my dragon scales turned back into fur and my scaly legs once more became paws. "I'll take care of this then," said Julia as she climbed down inside the tree roots with the collar. So that's the end of that chapter. That's from the fourth book in the series. And Rolo and I will be back tomorrow with another adventure for you. And we hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll be back at 3:30 tomorrow. Thank you. Goodbye.